Hello and welcome back to the Square Ball podcast with William Hill, myself, Dave McIntyre, with another brilliant guest today, which we will get to in a moment. Thanks so much for listening over the last few weeks. We're at the halfway point of season 2. We've had some amazing guests so far, not just in previous weeks, but going back to last season as well. So if you're only delving into our archive, please go way deep into it, because the vast majority of the episodes that we brought you to this point will not have dated in any way. They're still there, ready to be listened to, and we've got plenty more to come in the weeks to come. Do get in touch with us if you're watching us on YouTube. Please subscribe to the @SquareBallPod YouTube page. You can leave a comment, subscribe, leave a review. Let us know if there's any guests you would like to hear from in the future. You can also get in touch with us via our social media pages at William Hill Ireland on both Instagram and Twitter. There's loads of great more sports content on there as well. And whatever podcast app you are using, please make sure that you subscribe to the feed so that naturally the new episode every week will automatically drop for you. Now, there's a real bang of the Rebel County in the studio today, because I'm joined by Aisling Thompson. How are you?
I'm good, Dave.
Another big win for the Cork Camogie team in the Munster Championship, which I'm sure we'll get into at some stage. And we are joined by Cork. Not that Aisling isn't royalty, but this person really is Cork royalty, because we're joined by one of the greats of hurling and indeed football. This man has won 4 All-Ireland club titles, 2 each in hurling and football, 6 All-Ireland medals with the Cork senior footballers and hurling, 1 in football, 5 in hurling, 7 All-Stars across both codes, 10 Munster hurling medals. That's a joint record. He's managed the Cork hurlers to the All-Ireland minor and senior titles. He is one of the greats in both codes and one of the truly great dual players. Jimmy Barry Murphy, thank you so much for joining us on the Square Ball podcast. What an honour. Thanks a million for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're looking well. 70 years old now, if you don't mind us telling our viewers and our listeners, and you look like you could still do a job.
Well, the whole country knows my age anyway, so that's no secret. So no, I'm feeling good, thank God. Have my health and get up every morning, enjoy myself. That's the main thing. And
you're still very active with the Bars. You're a selector on the football team.
Yeah, I'm involved in my club always. Yeah, club senior football team, minor hurling team with Kevin Murray, who's now doing all the hard work. I'm just an advisor, so keeps me going, and I get to know the young lads coming through, which I love. So really enjoy that as well.
I was chatting to you before we started recording about sort of where your reputation is amongst the young fellas around the Bars Club and around Cork, because obviously to them you're no more than a YouTube hurler and footballer. It's a long time, so even some of their fathers mightn't even have seen you play. So have they got an idea as to what your exploits on the field were?
I don't know. I mean, one of the senior footballers was flagging me one night there recently about did I ever get a goal with my left leg? He said, go look up on YouTube and you'll find out. Yeah. I'm sure he didn't bother. Too much trouble.
Well, you would have found plenty of examples if he had done.
Not too many, but he might have found one.
It's your interesting that it's your second year as a selector with the Bar Seniors. So obviously the new rules coming in have overlapped with your time working with the first team. So you're coaching a different game this year than you were last year. Have you found it?
Well, I'm not coaching, Dave. I'm just a selector and I'm an advisor to Brian Holt, who's our team manager. But it's very important because first of all, I've got to learn the rules myself, because early on this year I was screaming at one of our defenders to pass the ball back to the keeper. One of the lads in the line said to me, Jimmy, he can't, he's not allowed. I didn't feel great after that, but I had to do a recheck on all the rules. But I think it's been fantastic, and I'd like to pay tribute to Jim Gavin, Eamon Fitzmaurice and all those lads. I think the rules have been sensational. Obviously, there's been a few tweaks had to be made along the way. I think there's 1 or 2 more still have to be made.
Is there any that you don't agree with?
Well, just the one in particular in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last Saturday, Cork and Kerry. There was a number of instances where the player would make a clean catch and drive with the ball and make contact with the opposition player. And the opposition player hadn't even time to get out of the way. And the ball then was immediately moved 50 metres down the field. The tap over point for whichever team got it. So I think there are players obviously trying to play the referee a bit with that one. So that's got to be stopped, because you can't have that situation. The penalty is far too great for what is
2 points.
It's perceived as an offence, which technically is not most times.
How do you feel about the handing back of the ball? That's one I find very interesting.
It's a difficult one. I mean, it's never been part of our culture. But look, maybe it's a good thing, and I think the whole thing in GA really over the years that has evolved has to be more respect for the referee. And look, I've been on the line myself. I've been guilty of it, getting onto referees, getting onto linesmen. So I'm not going to claim I'm any different than anybody else. But I think it's the start of a culture change in that respect. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think if you canvass any number of GA fans, you can probably find one person somewhere that would have an issue with every rule. But the 2 point mark, that seems to be one that commonly is annoying everybody.
Yeah.
You know, lads, as you say, they're actually in the air contesting the ball, and then half a second later your man's driving through them, and because they haven't been able to get out of the way, they're bringing the ball forward. It's just very penal.
I think Eamon Fitzmaurice made that point after the game on Saturday and Sunday, that there was a number of instances whereby you could not honestly say that the player was impeded by the opposite player. It was more the coming together after an initial great catch maybe. But the penalty there is just, in my opinion, far too great.
Yeah.
But I would say overall, watching all the games this year, and I watch an awful lot of sport, obviously, and Gaelic football, the standard in the games has been phenomenal this year. One game has been better than the other, and the rules have definitely enhanced the whole image of our game, and that's the main thing, really. And I think it's fantastic this year.
You could argue that it's overshadowing the hurling championship, couldn't you, at this stage?
No, I'd agree. I think even looking at the Ulster football, it's on par, if not as good as the Munster hurling at the moment.
Absolutely. Actually, I was saying today before we started that the Ulster football games this year were beyond belief.
Yeah.
I mean, and the great thing that is the 2 point game, the 2-pointer has changed the whole concept of the game, where you're leading by 5 or 6 points. Now, in Gaelic football last year, the game was over. Now it's a whole new ball game. The temptation, of course, at times, which I think Dublin made a mistake last Sunday of going for too many 2-pointers early on. You still have to chip away at the lead, I think, at times to bring you into the chance of winning the game with 2-pointers.
It's amazing what a line drawn on a field does to a player's mindset. Like, they'd never dream of taking these shots on if there wasn't an arc right in front of them. It's
yeah, well, I mean, I can definitely say I would never have scored from outside the arc. But watching Rian O'Neill last Sunday was
unbelievable.
In education was fabulous to watch. And if that hasn't enhanced the game, then nobody will convince me it hasn't. I think it's been fantastic.
Yeah, well, I was in Oba Saturday night to see Patrick Durkin back in the field, clipping scores as if he was 7-8 years ago for Mayo. To see Rian O'Neill back in the field, it's been absolutely brilliant. It's been an incredible championship. We're going to go rewind the clock back a bit, Jimmy, if that's all right with yourself. I want to go back to Cork City, late 60s, early 70s, when you're really starting to find your feet as a teenager in both codes. Was it always kind of 50-50 down the line between hurling and football, or was there one that you had a particular grow for before you kind of broke through into the minor scene?
It seemed to be, it was always 50-50, but initially I seemed to be performing better at football, and I played minor football and hurling with Cork, obviously, and then I was brought into the football scene quicker than I was into the hurling scene, so that's why I played for senior football with Cork before the senior hurlers, because the hurlers didn't pick me. But I was picked by the footballers, and obviously, luckily enough, after winning a minor All-Ireland, we won a senior final in 73. So that, I suppose, immediately launched my career as a senior footballer. Yeah, so
75 before you were brought onto the senior hurling panel. Did that annoy you at the time? Did you think, geez, I would have thought I was right up there hurling-wise as well?
Well, I'd been playing senior football, hurling with my club since 71. So I suppose I was thinking that I could have been playing, but it wasn't a big deal for me. I was playing senior football with Cork and absolutely loving it, so I just was biding my time. I can't remember being in any way annoyed about not being picked or anything.
And
I was hoping my chance would come, obviously.
Yeah, and would that
there were quite a number of dual players that time as well.
Yes, exactly. And that would have been reflective probably from how the club, would that be from how the club scene was going with the bars, or?
Yeah, but we weren't really winning any counties from 71. I played senior football 71 and hurling from that time on, but we weren't dominating the county or anything, so I was playing good enough hurling. I played minor hurling, but I didn't start at minor hurling level, whereas I was perceived as a better footballer. I think that would have been accurate. You
played in the All-Ireland minor final in both codes in 1971, is that correct?
And 72.
And 72.
Yeah.
So you must have never been away from the football/hurling field. With the club, both codes, and playing minor for both teams with Cork.
Yeah, but as you know, at senior level that time, you played one round in the senior hurling championship of football in Cork. If you're beaten, you were out. So your summer was gone. But it was non-stop matches. And I always felt, people often ask me afterwards about 1973, how, could celebrations have got to your head and all that. And quite honestly, I always said this, I didn't have a chance to celebrate because we were playing in the under-21 county championship the following Sunday after we beat Galway in the All-Ireland final or something like that. So matches non-stop all through the winter as well.
The relaxed nature of your demeanour in that 73 final, just looking back at some clips of it, I mean, you're 19 and Cork haven't won the All-Ireland since the mid-40s. Like, there's a huge game for Cork football. It's massive. It's a drought that the team is involved in. And to see you cruising around Croke Park in that final against Galway, you get the couple of goals. The celebration is, people should need to check out your celebration. Like the two hands are into the air, but you have the palms of your hand facing the sky, and there's a look as if like, well, what else did you expect?
Well, it's a bit embarrassing now looking at something, honestly, and I'm being honest and saying that it is, but I was just a bit cocky, I suppose, and I certainly, I mean, I've been asked this, and Ashley will know this from playing when you're young. I think we're all different, and
absolutely.
Young people might feel the pressure more than others. I literally, and honestly, can say, hand in my heart, I didn't feel the slightest bit of pressure. I was playing well, I suppose, getting goals. I honestly didn't feel the pressure of the occasion whatsoever. I mean, I've often said this, and I've said it on the record. In latter years of my career as a hurler, I felt immense pressure going out representing Cork at 19 or 20. Honestly, I didn't care in the world. It didn't worry me in the slightest. I loved every minute of it, and I suppose that's reflected in my cocky celebrations of the goals, you know. But
I suppose there's far more experienced lads around you. There's the expectation is on the shoulders of all the other lads in the dressing room.
Well, that's the point.
They're leaders, like, you know, in the dressing room that you would have pointed out, and you know, would have gave you the confidence.
Very much so. I mean, the leaders in our team that time were people like, I've often said this, were Billy Morgan, Ray Cummins, Frank Hogan, you know, Kevin Gerald Sullivan, people who had been playing with Cork for years and had suffered major disappointments at Kerry's hands and been beaten by Meath in 67 in the All-Ireland final. I mean, I was in Hill 16 watching that final, and I didn't think, who would think a few years later I'd be playing with those lads. So they felt the pressure, I'm sure. But for me, what was it? I was starting out in my career, and at that stage you think you'll be in Croke Park every day. But as we know, in Cork football, it doesn't go that way. But that's the reality. I felt that way, and honestly, I can say, hand on my heart, going down to Croke Park in the bus, I didn't have a care in the world.
And would you have any feeling or emotion towards like putting on a Cork jersey?
Oh, incredibly so. And as my career went on, Aisling, I was very, very conscious of it, because, you know, you then, as you grow into the senior football and hurling teams in your county, and this applies everywhere, and you know this yourself, you're representing your family, representing your club, and representing the whole county. And you see what it means to people in their daily life outside of playing. And then it starts to hit you what this occasion means to so many people. So it did grow on me, the responsibility of it. And but I must say, I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
There's always been, certainly in my memory, a general feeling outside of Cork that the hurlers get an awful lot more of the love than the footballers do. And even when Cork won it under Conor Coonahan in 2010, I just never felt that team got the credit it deserved, or the love that maybe the hurlers might have got in 99 when your team won, or in 2004 and 5 when they won those back-to-back All-Irelands. There wasn't the same outpouring of emotion. Firstly, is that an accurate perception? And secondly, if it is, was it like that in the 70s when you were playing with the footballers?
Well, I think it's all relative to success. I mean, Cork Hurling since the 1920s had been massively successful, winning All-Irelands every decade, 4 in a row in the 40s, 3 in a row in the 50s, you know, the 20s, 3 in a row, 1970s, 3 in a row again. So the Cork people are no different than anybody else. And I've been asked that recently as well, and I made a point that I think it's down to success, and I think that if the footballers were going very, very well, winning All-Irelands every second year, it'd be the same thing. But that's just life. I mean, Cork people are no different. They like to follow a winner. And we've seen the crowds at the hurling games over the last couple of years. It's been incredible. I mean, I have grandchildren going to the matches now, and it's absolutely fantastic. But I think it can be hard on the footballers. But again, you're meeting a team like from Kerry every year who are difficult to get over, and particularly in the knockout days when you're meeting Kerry in the Munster final, you got beaten and your year was over. So Cork people didn't have the extended run to generate the love with the footballers that they had with the hurlers. I think generally anyway, it's more a hurling orientated county, because the strength of the clubs would always indicate that there's a great spread of clubs, and the strength of those clubs reflects the support, I think.
So is that story true, that back in those days in the 70s that Micko would come into the dressing room after a Munster final and promote you all and tell you, oh, you guys are the second best team in the country, and so we know if we've beaten you, we can go on and win the All-Ireland? That's sort of an urban myth that's grown legs over the years.
He did say it in a couple of occasions.
Did he?
Unfortunately, I was on the receiving end of it on a few occasions, but I'm sure he meant it in fairness.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that was a Cork team, that was the only test Kerry we're going to get really before an All-Ireland semi-final. When we knew you were coming in, I was trying to figure out how we should structure this, because obviously it's almost like 3 different careers. You've got your career as the footballer, career as the hurler and then the career as the manager. So if we can kind of box off the football side of it, you've mentioned winning the All-Ireland minor title and then your kind of introduction in 1973 winning an All-Ireland, and you win the Munster title again in 74, and that's it. It dries up then for you. Did you win a league medal in 1980? Might have been the next medal after that.
I called a day at football after that.
Yes, exactly. It was 6 consecutive Munster finals. There might have been a replay in there one of the years where looking at it, you're absolutely robbed that day. We might get to that in a moment. But how hard was that? Like, this is old school, straight knockout. You're getting one shot at it every year. You're losing to Kerry usually in the Munster finals. You might have had a game against Tip or Clare or Limerick.
Yeah, it was difficult. We won the All-Ireland in 1973. Went down to Clarny the following year and beat Kerry. So that's 2 in a row. And then from then on to 1980, even though, as you said, in 1976, certainly decisions went against us that this day.
These are catastrophic decisions.
Catastrophic is the word.
Like, there's one where
I don't like to upset myself too much thinking about it.
I'd said a free out on the 21-yard line. The Mikey Sheehy fires short to somebody. I can't remember which Kerry forward it was. Sean Walsh, a pretty tame shot that's easily caught by a Cork defender on the goal line, and he starts carrying the ball out. Umpire runs for his flag, puts the green flag in the air. It's an absolute crime, that one. And then there's you kick a free in from around the 21, lobbed in around the house, and it's punched to the net.
But Dave, I definitely didn't take a free because I never took a football.
Was it not you that took it?
I think Sean Murphy took it. And Declan Barron fisted it.
And Barron's clearly outside the square when the ball's kicked.
So you had a 6-point turnaround in the space of 4 minutes. I mean, it was incredible. And we were going very, very well. And I often say this. So a whole generation of Cork players missed out on going to Croke Park. Look, these things happen, and it's not as if we didn't win enough in our careers, but that was a horrendous outcome for us that day. And Brian Murphy literally was a foot outside the goal line when the umpire dived for the flag, couldn't believe our eyes. And then Declan Barron scores the most magnificent fisted goal, and they saves in the square. I mean, it just defies logic. So, but look, as I said, water under a bridge. But as I said, and you've asked me the question, and I've said it already, it did define a huge generation of Cork footballers' careers, because you go on to be hammered by Kerry again the next couple of years. So the panel changes, and as is the evolution of these teams, you'll know it from your playing yourselves, that changes the whole dynamic, and players move on and players come in, and it had to wait on the Tyke Murphy's famous goal then in 1983, was it? In Páirc Uí Chaoimh when we turned the tide.
So would you say like it had a significant impact on you moving forward, like in those next few years? Like,
absolutely. Sure. Actually, we had a very, very good team, and a lot of very good young footballers, even around my own age group, who were coming onto the scene. Nemo Rangers were a powerhouse at the time, and my own club, St. Mars, were starting to be very successful. And then you had this whole snatched away from us, really, and it did affect us, I think, definitely for a couple of years, because the dynamic changes. If you get to Croke Park, of course, your whole year changes.
I think if there was a qualifier system or a backdoor system, there would have been an All-Ireland in that group of Cork players.
I'm not sure about that, because you never know. All-Irelands are hard to win, but how you will never know how a team develops, having beaten Kerry in a replay, what that would have done for us. I mean, confidence would have gone through the roof, and players' careers would have developed differently.
Sorry, Ash, are we coming in there?
I was just going to say, is it a moment that still replays? I know, when I look at it myself in my own career, and like there's moments in the game where you've made decisions yourself that have impacted, like, like winning an All-Ireland final. Happened to me a few years ago against Kilkenny. Like I had the chance to draw and I put it wide, and that was it. It was game over. And I'm trying, I was able to put it to the back of my mind fairly lively, and I haven't really thought about it since. But would you say the moment in that game, like those two decisions, would that be something that still replays in your memory? Or
it does, really. Yeah. I mean, I'd be very. I was lucky enough to go on and have a career after, successful enough, I suppose, in hurling. I won a National League medal in 1980, but no more success. Never appeared in Croke Park again with Cork senior football team in championship football. So from that point of view, it does. It's very. I feel more for the players
when it's out of your control.
It's out of my control, actually.
Yeah.
I feel very much sorry for the players on the team who were very good players, who didn't get the chance ever again to appear in Croke Park, who could have, and it was their one big shot at it probably. And I do think of it. It's not going to keep me awake at night at this stage, but over the next couple of years, it rankled badly at the time.
Yeah. So would they obviously come back and get to the All-Ireland semi-final in '83. I just wondered, at that point, you're still a relatively young man. After you retire from the footballers in 1980, are there efforts made to try and get you back at any point?
Not really. There may have been some soundings. I was still playing senior football in my club, and I won my last county with them in 1985. So I was playing to a fairly good level of football, but I had made my decision, and there was no going back, because I don't think I never thought it was fair to go back then. What was I going to do? Wait for Cork to be carrying the Munster final and come back? Right, lads? Yeah. Good to go now. Here we go to Croke Park again. I wouldn't have been for me, and I wasn't asked that time anyway, rightly so. But no, Dave, it was never really broached at that stage. I'd made my call, and that was it.
So the world of the dual player, it was obviously far more common in the 70s and in the 80s. But I think you have to go back to Alan Kearns in 2001 for the last player who's played in the hurling and football finals in the same year. You have to go back to Teddy McCarthy and Dennis Walsh for the last time. It was won in the same year. What was your week like once you were brought into the 75 panel for the hurlers? Like, what's expected of you by the two sets of management teams? Are they in discussions with each other as to how best get the best out of you? What way would it have worked back then?
I wouldn't have thought so. That time the communications wouldn't have been like that, like they are nowadays. And when I was managing Cork, Larry Tompkins luckily was manager of the football team, and we had a fantastic relationship. Sean Og and Brian Corcoran were playing on both teams. So no, at that time I'd say communications were minimal. You just went out, played the football or played hurling, whatever was on. And 1975 actually was the first year, I would say, that we had an actual coach of the Cork senior hurling team. Well, I believe it was the first time Jim Barry had been their legendary figure, but Justin McCarthy had recently retired was still playing with his club, and he was the first coach that I would have come under, who was a fantastic hurling coach and a brilliant brain for the game. And this was a new thing, because Justin had played with a lot of the players who were on this panel still, but he was a brilliant coach, and a lot of his ideas were very innovative.
So what do you mean, though, when you say there wasn't a coach? Like,
there was more a selection committee in the early,
how did training work?
70s. Well, I got to go back and ask people. I talked to Charlie McCarthy a lot. He's a friend of mine, and we discussed this, and he said it was just a different world completely. Selection committee picked the team. They went down the park, pucked a few balls around, did a few laps of the field, and I'm not to denigrate it or anything.
Yeah,
that's
just the way it was
in every county. So Justin McCarthy was the first of, in my time, a specific hurling coach who would work on your skills, talk to you about tactics, identify certain players in the opposition, and he did a lot of that work. And unfortunately, he was left go after 1975 and went on to coach other counties. But
30 years later, he's winning Munster titles with Waterford.
And he coached Antrim, and he also coached Clare, and but Cork made a call at the time not to reappoint him, and a lot of the players were very disappointed, but that time you didn't have any say anyway.
In 1976, you guys win the All-Ireland, and Christy Ring is part of the selection team. Jimmy Barry Murphy and Christy Ring as part of the same kind of Cork setup it's quite something. Obviously, Christy had retired a few years earlier, but what is it like being kind of in his presence? And for those listening or watching us today who don't really have a feel for Christy Ring, the mythical figure from Cork Hurling, what was it like back then, having him in and around the group?
Well, that time my name certainly wasn't anyone mentioned that, right, I can tell you, or ever since. But he was a mythical figure, as you said. He had won the magical 8 All-Irelands on the field at the time. He was the only man to have done that on the field of play. And he came in then as a selector with a new Blackrock won the county, and they appointed a new selection committee. And Father Bertie Troy was appointed coach, who was a brilliant coach as well, in fairness. And then Christy Ring became part of the selection committee. And that was huge for all the players. I think I can speak for myself anyway. I thought it was a huge appointment, because he was this great mythical figure out there who didn't really get involved in Cork teams since he stopped playing. And then all of a sudden, here he was with us. And to me, it was fantastic, because, I mean, you put the word there, mythical figure, which he was to us. And the Cork public loved that as well. Even though he was a man who kept his distance from a lot of people, he didn't socialise. He was a very private person. But he came involved then, and it was I think, a very significant appointment for the team as a group, even though at the time we may not have understood what it might come to mean as we went on. And it's fair to say that in his initial involvement was very hands-off. Right. But as the team went on, it grew, and his influence became massive, I thought, certainly for me anyway. And I know from speaking to other players, maybe not them all, because we all look at these things differently. I loved having him around. I loved him around the dressing room. He spoke brilliantly when he spoke. Around training, watching you felt under pressure. Having him there, he was just an extraordinary figure, and lucky to have him involved for those few years.
I heard you talking about it. Was it a Munster Championship match against Limerick where you struggled in the first half, you're into the breeze in the second half, and you described Christy Ring is giving one of the greatest halftime team talks that you can ever remember.
Well, that was against Clare in 77.
It's Clare.
Yeah.
Well, so for a private man, a softly spoken man.
Well, yeah, I said initially, I remember I was in the dressing room in 1976. I was assaulted the first round of the championship against Tipperary in Limerick. I wasn't picked. And I was in the dressing room at half time, and Christy Ring came in. And I was sitting with Dr. Con Murphy, and this is a true story. I mean, there's plenty of stories about Christy Ring that go around that are a load of rubbish. Okay. He didn't speak an awful lot, but he came into the dressing room, and he had been in holidays in Butlins with his family. And he came in, I was sitting with Dr. Con, and he said, imagine I give up my holidays to watch this stuff. So that's a true story. And he did say that. That's the way he would talk. He was quite caustic in his comments if he said something. And then I was introduced to halftime anyway. So that was my first involvement that year with the senior championship team. So I came in at halftime and we won. But it's fair to say that as the years went on, his role evolved. And that day in 77 at halftime, we were really under the cosh against Clare. They were a brilliant team. And but his to me, his speech was inspirational. And again, I mean, you could ask other players, maybe they wouldn't have felt that, but I certainly did. And I know Johnny Crowley was a great friend of mine. We were near each other, and he was lifted by it. And
so what was he saying?
I can't remember the exact specific details of it, and I wouldn't want to repeat a lot of it anyway. But it was mostly the gist of where Cork, and you heard Clare coming off the field, roaring their team off. They think they have us now, but it was generally the bones of that now. But he didn't use bad language or anything like that ever. He was very, very well spoken and a very, very private person in many ways. But that day, he threw off the gloves that day and spoke to us and told us what we were needed to do. And I found it truly inspirational.
Would you say having him involved brought even your game to a different level? Was he a huge inspiration to you before he ever came in?
He was inspiration as a mythical figure, as Dave said, Ashling. I wouldn't say now that he was a huge help to my game.
Yeah.
It was more his presence around the scene or watching.
But training. Adding that pressure, do you believe it?
I suppose it did. It made you raise your standards. Right? When now that you're asking me the question, I think it probably did, because you're looking at him walking around training. He'd come in a suit, shirt and tie to training that time. Now Father Troy was a very, very good coach as well. He was he was coaching colleges teams, had 1 minor and 21. Great coach, but having Christy Ring around was a different factor to it. I thought it brought the X factor to the team, certainly.
Brilliant
Especially
team.
on big days. He was very involved big days. He loved to be around it. And as I said, by the time he finished up in 1978, he died soon after the 78 final. He had a huge impact.
Yeah, so he was there for the 3 in a row.
Absolute 3 in a row, yeah. And particularly when we got to meet Kilkenny in 78, it was through the roof, his involvement, because he had this thing about Kilkenny. He said at the time they were, and they still are to this day, great hurling county. And we always set our standards by that time. It was Tipperary and Kilkenny. And as I said, I hate doing this because it's not to take for other counties. But at the time, and that's the reality, they were the big. Tipperary were on the decline a bit, but Kilkenny were still the big ones. We beat Wexford in 76 and 77. And then all of a sudden, we're meeting Kilkenny in 78. And that was the one he wanted. He said he had this thing about Kenny that they think they invented the game, and and it was in a funny way. Now we'd say that, but his involvement prior to the game, in particular, one great team meeting. I'll always remember in the Imperial Hotel in town. We had a meeting, and he spoke at length about Kilkenny and he went through a sequence of a score he got against Kilkenny himself. And this was most unusual because he didn't discuss his own career at all with anybody, as far as I know, in general. But his input at that team meeting in particular was inspirational before we played the final.
So he died a happy man, having watched Cork win the 3 in a row against the Cats in Croke Park.
A young man, unfortunately, soon a couple of months after. But that day in Croke Park, I never saw him. If anyone has any videos or film, but he was on the line that day. You could never imagine a man so animated. It was the one he wanted. I suppose to seal the 3 in a row, having beaten Wexford in 2 in a row, and then your big rivals over 100 years, you're playing them in the third one. And he felt, I think, the two would have been devalued if we didn't beat Kilkenny in the third one. So that was a huge occasion for him and for all of us.
The goal you scored in that final, is that the flukiest goal ever scored in an All-Ireland hurling final? We actually saw something very similar in Nolan Park a couple of weeks ago when TJ Reid scored against Dublin, where the goalkeeper is expecting a pile driver to come in and it ends up dribbling along the ground towards him, and he just is unable to readjust his body in time to save what should have been pretty much a back pass. It's incredible.
I couldn't have put any better. Lucas goal.
Well, in fairness, I thought there was a bit of a gammy bounce on it.
Gammy bounce, because I think Dick O'Hara actually deflected past Noel skiing.
One of the great goalkeepers as well.
Great keeper.
Yeah,
and
there was kind of two in front of him. I'd say he was half blindsided.
I don't even know his language was very nice when it went past him to whoever deflected it past him. Because but as somebody said, I read what Jimmy Greaves one time said, you don't have to break the back and then just get her over the line.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I mean, you won everything there was multiple times over. The one thing you never got to do was to walk up the steps of the Hogan stand as the Cork captain and lift the Lee McCarthy and give the speech and everything that goes with that. Look, I'm not sure it's something you think about given everything that you won, but you're the captain in 82, beaten by a Kilkenny team that had Cody in it. And you said that you felt that the burden of the captaincy affected your personal performance that day.
Yeah, looking back on it, I mean, I loved being captain of Cork, obviously, and I said it already, I had made a mistake of saying I had one ambition was to captain Cork to win All-Ireland, and I said you should never say these things because they'll come back to bite you. But luckily enough, I got the opportunity to captain Cork because at that time, the club county champions in Cork would nominate the captain, and I was lucky enough to be nominated both years. So, as you said already, like at the time I was shattered after being beaten. The second year in particular, I thought I'd get second time round, Cork, you have a great chance of winning one, you think. But we just made a brilliant Kilkenny team. And, you got to acknowledge that then. They certainly paid us back for 78. I was singing our praises a while ago for 78. But they got their own back, certainly, those 2 years. But I'd say the burdency of captaincy got to me. It certainly got to me in the finals. I played very poorly in both finals. And that was something that did hanker with me for a while. So
what was running through your mind, that you kind of had to be the lead or the main leader, like taking?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. Do you know something? I think it got to me in the sense that, and then when the day came, I was hoping somebody else would do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was playing. We had a very good team. We got through to the 2 great years. I played great hurling myself. I thought both years, never playing better. I thought myself, but then the big day, just not to play well, not to score. Which was part of my game all my life, was getting a few scores, and then not to score in either final and to play poorly was. But again, as the years go on, you tend to compartmentalize it, put it away, and say I had lucky enough the years all I had. But
are you thinking about the speech? Are you thinking about lifting the cup, or is it that there's other thoughts in your head that are just kind of muddling your?
There was no sports psychologist those days. Maybe if somebody was talking to me and advising me how to approach it differently. I suppose the whole thing about being captain and finally achieving what my life's ambition was got to me on the day. And it was only on the day because, as I said already, I think any judgment, I think I was playing grey hurling all through Munster. And then the final days to bomb out was very, very disappointing. The second year in particular, I was gutted after it, and I found that hard to take. But look, again, I had a county final to face a few weeks after, so you just get on with it. And as somebody said one day, it's not as if you didn't win enough. Yeah. You can't be selfish about these things.
Yeah,
I think, to answer the question, Aisling, I think it was the whole mental image of, I finally hear it again in the day. Surely it'll happen today.
Yeah.
And then I didn't do anything myself to make it happen,
And you feel like you were carrying almost the whole county on your shoulders at that point?
Yeah, and I suppose my granduncle had Captain Cork to win All-Ireland, and I felt I was carrying the family tradition. But I think it was more it was more myself that I'd built this up in my own head to be captain. And again, at the end, the following, we won it in 84, and John Fenton, who was a great friend of mine, a great captain as well, was brilliant for John. It was a thrill for him. But, he'd loved to have had been media before.
Yeah, that year before, we talked about one of the all-time fluky goals in an All-Ireland final. This wasn't in a final, the one I want to talk to you about, but it was in the semi-final that year against Galway, where John Fenton, who you've just mentioned, your great old pal, sends this brilliant ball that never really gets more than 8-10 feet off the ground. It seems like it's a level trajectory all the way through, and you pull on it in the air. Like the level of coordination and timing and peripheral vision required to be able to stick that ball in the net when it's coming at you from John at that speed. Again, any of our listeners or viewers, if you haven't seen it, YouTube this video. It's just incredible to watch. What are your memories of that? I'm asking you for a memory that lasted half a second, but it's just magic.
It's a nice memory to have, Dave, in hindsight. But honestly, I've always said this. It's not just being overly modest now. I never saw the big deal about it. I mean, it was an All-Ireland semi-final. I'd much prefer if I got it in the final and we won, which we didn't. So someone did say that to me a few weeks after. I said, "Pity you didn't do it in the final."
And did you say it was something you had already attempted loads, but it never came off?
Actually, pulling balls a million times in matches. I mean, actually, I was Martin Conor Hayes, who was a great pal of mine before and after, and when John struck the ball, actually I thought he'd mishit it, and I actually used.
Do you think John was going for a point?
I'm not sure actually. I never really asked him, because John got an equally fantastic goal himself a couple of years later against Limerick. But when John struck the ball, I was half a yard behind Conor Hayes, and I said, Conor, I said, John, and I went for it, and half a step behind Conor, but I suppose when I got there, I just decided I'm a bit behind Conor. I got to do something different here, and I just let fly in the air. Simple as that. I mean, there's no big explanation. There's no big.
I don't think you even celebrated.
Well, yeah, it's just me finally All-Ireland as far as I was concerned. Just getting to Croke Park, actually, as far as getting to the final. But it's funny when you ask me, but honestly, and this, I said this is not being modest. I didn't see a great big deal about it. It's great to look back on it.
Do you not appreciate the brilliance of it though? Like if DJ Carey did and we were watching those videos, or Henry, or any of the great forwards of their generation, we'd be looking at that going, that is one of the all-time great
I don't know.
moments.
Look, it seems...
Just the timing.
It's all time, ridiculous timing.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's one of the things that happen in your career. If you hang around long enough, you might be lucky enough to get one.
Well, you were always a modest man.
No, I said not being modest here. It was not Ernst semi-final. It was lovely to go it, but I got as much kick out of the one in 78. Exact same return as far as I'm concerned.
You probably get more of a kick out of 78 because it led with a medal in the back pocket afterwards. The Centenary final in 84 is played in Thurles, obviously to mark where the GA was founded and everything, and it's you're looking to avoid the 3 in a row, losing the 3 in a row, which is Cork are more associated with winning 3 in a row rather than losing 3 in a row. And you're not the captain that day. You're playing an Offaly team in Semple Stadium, but Cork are the preeminent sports team, the hurlers, in the county at that time, and one of the most recognisable sports teams in the country at that time. Is there huge pressure going into that game? The thoughts of a third consecutive All-Ireland final defeat, does that weigh heavy on the minds of players?
I think it did. Certainly, any of us who've been there, and most of the team have been there in 82 and 83, But I suppose, in fairness, I think in hindsight, it was a good thing to change the captaincy because Middleton won the county, so John Fenton then became captain. And John deserved it to be captain of all players, an absolute classic hurler, brilliant stylist. But I think all year, all the panel would have felt the pressure of Centenary year. And I think the minute the situation was announced that the final was going to be in Thurles, it was massive in Cork. We have no idea at the time. It's one thing I do remember about the whole year. Thurles. How could it be played in Thurles and Cork not be there? That was in our minds the whole time. And the whole year was geared towards Thurles and the All-Ireland final. And there was an obsession, I would say, of the whole panel that we had to be there. And there was a couple of times during the year when it was close calls. The final was an incredible game with Tipperary. But once we got to Thurles, when we felt we were unbeatable, and just on the day went our way against Offaly, we were well on top most of the game.
And of all the finals that you played in terms of like ticket allocations and the having lost 2 All-Irelands in a row, the Centenary, it's in Thurles, everything you've just kind of described there, was there ever a build-up like that?
It was an incredible occasion. Ticket demand,
like much reduced capacity, obviously. Everyone wants to be there.
All the old captains were brought out on the day. All the previous Cork captains, club men of my own, great men like my father-in-law Mick Kennefick was captain, Sean Condon, all the great Cork players.
All paraded before throw-in,
are
they?
All paraded before throw-in. And we knew this. It was incredible. It was extraordinary. And Thurles that day was just a very, very special occasion. And I think we were lucky enough just to be the team that did it because we wanted to be there. But
there's still a game to be won, obviously.
Yeah.
So there's always the danger that all of this pageantry before the game, and Offaly obviously one of the more unfancy teams to qualify for an All-Ireland in that decade. They're just kind of waiting in the long Semple Stadium grass.
It was interesting because we obviously stayed at home on the Saturday night rather than travelling to Dublin like we normally would. Train up on Sunday morning, and the Cork management in their wisdom decided we go to a particular convent for a bit of peace and quiet, get away from all the madness. So the nuns in the local presentation convent brought us in there, and we were cocooned away from everybody, and it worked certainly on the day for us.
You lose the 85 semi to Galway, you're back in 86 again against Galway, and it's your 5th All-Ireland hurling medal, and you retire. But at what point in that year had you decided that come what may on the first Sunday in September, I'm done?
Well, I decided in a couple of months building up to it, wherever that season ended, I was deciding I was going to call it a day. I just felt my yard of pace was gone a bit. I depended on my speed, pace all my life. I remember later years when Ben O'Connor retired, he said to me, we played a National League match in Dublin, and Ben said to me, Jimmy, I'm gone. The pace is gone. And he said, no way, I'm coming back. And I said, fair enough. But I felt the same way before the 86 final. I said, if I get away, I was actually in the hotel with Johnny Crowley before the match. Dr. Connor was always sharing with me, but he was gone to the minor final. Cork were in the minor final as well. He was with the minor team. So Johnny Crowley came in. We were great friends, neighbours, grew up together. And I said to Johnny, if we get out of this today, I said, I'm gone. And he said, you're joking. I said, I guarantee. I said, this is it.
You're still a young man. Like you don't turn 32 until that August.
Yeah.
So you're 32 the day of the All-Ireland final.
It's amazing. I just had my mind made up. And I said to Johnny, I'm gone if we get out of this today. And
were you still really enjoying it like that year in terms of training? Like,
I wasn't actually. I was just getting a bit tired of it. I found going to training was starting to be a bit of a chore.
So it was body and mind.
I think so together. Yeah, I think so. Bit of a kind of it came together. That you asked the question. It came together that
because I'd imagine it wouldn't just be a physical thing.
No, it was both.
Yeah.
I suppose we had, and then again, 86. Tom Cashman was captain. Another great friend of mine, and we've soldiered together later on with Cork management team. And great for Tom to go as captain. Johnny Clifford was our coach, who I was great friends with. And it was just a perfect coming together for that. And I suppose I could have played on for a year or two, but how long do you play on? It's a matter for everyone themselves. It's a very individualistic thing, I think. And as Aisling said there, it was coming together, my mind and my body. I felt just drained from the whole thing. And
you're constantly in the spotlight. Like you're the most recognised hurler in the country at that time, and it's a different era now. We've talked about this in the podcast a few times.
Completely different.
Unfortunately, the modern generation of players, they wear helmets all the time, and we just like if Aaron Gillan walked into a lot of places, people wouldn't recognise him.
It's extraordinary. Actually, I've commented on this quite a lot. We were walking I was with Shawnee McGrath to the Munster football match on Saturday, and a few of the Cork players came along. Obviously, I know a few of them. But Robbie Cotter was there on the panel, and I said, Shawnee, that's Robbie Cotter. And Shawnee hadn't a clue because he said, I've seen him playing a million times. Was the helmets.
Yeah.
It has changed the whole concept of recognition of hurlers, hasn't it?
It has. And so, like, even someone who's won like 8-9 All-Irelands maybe, they can walk down the main street of their local town or local city or wherever, and people just probably don't. They're almost anonymous. Where there wasn't JBM's not anonymous around Cork City in the mid 80s.
No, it can be embarrassing to meet a Cork player now. Some of the panel who you wouldn't have met before.
Yeah, and
we know certain guys obviously from around the clubs. You know, but then you meet a lad and you don't know his name because he hasn't got a helmet on.
Yeah,
and it's a whole different thing, isn't it?
But on Aisling's point that it wasn't just your body. You said you felt you lost a yard of pace, and obviously that was so intrinsic to your brilliance at your peak. But also being the main man for so long. Like you'd introduce yourself to Cork people in 73 with the footballers, 13 years on, like there's this huge expectation every time you walk onto the field that if it's not going well, Jimmy Barry Murphy's going to produce something.
I don't want to sound, and I hate being accused of being overly modest. I'm not that modest at all. We all love praise. I loved it more than anyone, and I loved the limelight. You saw my celebration in 73, so I wasn't that modest. But I'm just saying, being part of a team is different than an individual sport, I suppose. I didn't always feel I was the main man. I suppose, it's a good question because I suppose I felt the pressure of always having to get scores.
Yeah.
And then when I didn't score in 82 and 83, that hit me hard, as well as being captain. But I suppose, now that you asked the question, did I feel
when you say I felt drained, that I get the impression from you that you're like, oh, it's just I'm carrying this burden around with me the whole time, and it should be enjoyable. These should be the best days of my life.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't enjoying it towards the end of 86. And you've put it very well there. Maybe I did feel the pressure of having to get scores and goals every minute out.
Yeah, because you probably have the whole public of Cork coming up to you at every moment. As you said, you don't wear helmets, so like you're one of the most recognisable figures in Cork. So like, again, you've the pressure of the whole county. Like I was
working. I was a rep with a finance company. I was on the road meeting people every day.
Exactly.
I loved that aspect of it. Talking about games, people don't have to sit there. I never got sick of talking about it. I love meeting people. I was always around town, on the road, around the county, and meeting people at my work. So I think, now that you ask it, it probably was the pressure of coming
you knew the impact they were having on the people. I hadn't thought of that
before, to be honest, but it probably was,
Absolutely.
I remember being in Langton's the day Henry announced his retirement. Every GA journalist in the country was there that day. The hotel was full of people, and there was about 4 or 5 TV crews. Every radio journalist was there. I was bowled over by it, like this kid from Ballyhale deciding he wasn't going to play for the county anymore, and every journalist in the country is there to hear what he has to say about it. And there's the headline the day after you retire. I don't know whether it was the Evening Echo or it was the Examiner at the time, but it's front page, Jimmy Barry Murphy retires. That's just an indication of like what massive news this was at the time.
Yeah, I suppose it was big news at the time. Maybe I didn't realise how big it was going to be when I retired, but if I had my time back, I wouldn't have made it such a public announcement, to be honest.
Just not showed up for training the following
September
or wherever.
Weed myself out slowly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, like, so, that's what I should have done, but I made a mistake in making the big announcement, of course, and drawing all that stuff on me.
So what are the next couple of years like for you?
It was a nightmare then, because people say, do you miss it? And we're all different again, as I said. Every player's different. The only time I missed it was going to Killarney. Cork were playing Tipperary, and I said then went with my mother, like my late mother, and we had a lovely day out, but it was horrendous because I was sitting in the stand, and I could I still have been playing? Maybe I could have, but how long do you go on anyway?
Yeah.
And I went to extra time, and Cork were beaten, and that was the only day really that I ever badly missed it. As I had a great record against Tipperary, luckily enough, and. That day, I remember Tom Cash's interview, should have given him one more year.
So, yeah, as you say, when is the end?
I think though, when you have those feelings and thoughts, like I think it's very important to go with your gut, because I've seen so many players that have come before and after me, and have stayed on that extra year or two, and like really thought that they should have made that decision a lot earlier. So
I'd hate to be.
When you know.
And actually, I'd hate to be in a situation where I'd be dropped or taken off. I mean, lucky enough, I'd never been substituted in a match or taken off by Cork. And not that was in my head when I was thinking of retiring. I would hate to go on that road of thinking they had to play me and not be at the peak of your.
And you could be involved, and the team could be successful, but if you're not at the stage you want to be at as an individual. And I mentioned about Ben O'Connor when I remember Ben, we were playing Dublin in the National League in Croke Park, and Ben said to me, I'm sorry, I was misleading slightly. I was actually in Stratford waiting to go to races, but Cheltenham was on the following day, and I got a phone call from Ben. He said, Jimmy, I'm gone. I said, hang on a second, no, Ben, I'm from Cheltenham. He said, more or less, okay, where you are, I'm gone. And he mentioned about his yard of pace. He chased a Dublin player, or he wasn't getting there, and he said, he was a class player, and he was one guy I was really sorry to go, because I love Ben O'Connor as a player and as a person. And but Ben said to me, there was no, and I admired him. There was no, I didn't try to talk him out of it either. Every player's made their own call. Yeah.
As you mentioned there, how long do you hang on anyway?
Gary Neville, when he retired, it was after one game. He was getting roasted by a full back that he was like, this never used to happen to me. Yeah. Besides, during that game, I'd say I can't do this anymore. I'm not able to perform like I used to be able to. But it's so interesting, Jimmy. Get your thoughts on this. The different mindsets of people. Like we had Tommy Walsh.
Yeah, I was just
in here, and Tommy's mindset was, I am going to hurl for Kilkenny for as long as they'll have me.
Yeah,
and I'm going to be, when I stop playing for Kilkenny, it's because I'm essentially being told, not directly, but by selections,
get lost.
When I'm
I'm done.
He said, when I'm on the bench and I'm dropped, that's when my career is over. Right. Whereas I was kind of similar to you. Whereas I always said, like in interviews, that I want to finish, when I'm at my best.
Yeah.
And he was the opposite, and I just found that.
Yeah, I found that's my
intriguing
point. I think I felt that if 86 the All-Ireland final, win or lose, it was going out the top of the season.
Always leave them wanting more, Jimmy.
Pardon?
Always leave them wanting more.
Yeah, but I guess he didn't hang on either. Like the second he was dropped and that year was finished, he was done. That was it. So his legacy still remained the same. Yeah.
So at what point between 1986 All-Ireland final and accepting the Cork minor job, at what point does that managerial itch start to become something you think you need to scratch?
I was asked by my own club to get involved with my own minor coaching team, with the hurling team. And funnily enough, no one ever asked me to coach any football team. So
really?
It must have had any impact on them.
Right.
So I was asked to do the minor hurling team in my own club. And I was involved with a great bunch of young lads. And we won 4 counties in a row, actually. But not so much any my grade, but these lads have come through the system, and we had a very good bunch coming through. So we won a number of counties, and then the county board, Frank Murphy, asked me would I be interested in coaching the minor team. And I saw pretty much the minute I retired, I was involved in hurling again in my own club. I never took a year off. I was coaching straight away,
So you're the outstanding candidate to take the job then. You've led Cork to the All-Ireland minor title in 95. You take the senior job the following year. And the first 3 years are really tough, are they?
They're very tough, yeah. I didn't realise we won the minor All-Ireland, very, very good team. And a number of those players would go on, a substantial number of them would go on to win senior All-Irelands and a number of All-Irelands. So from that point of view, it was kind of, Johnny Clifford was standing down as manager and the county board asked me to take over. And I stepped in, and I suppose in hindsight, I thought it would be a lot easier than what it was. It was hugely challenging, and Cork had fallen well below the standard of the other counties, and Munster in particular. Clare were on the rise, Limerick were good, and you were just facing a very tough situation. And I certainly didn't realise the challenge that was there for us because we had fallen way, way down the ladder. And then the shock hits you of how difficult this job is going to be, and that you'd be damn lucky to have any success at all if I hung around long enough.
So you talk about the drain that you felt as a player in those last couple of years before you pulled the plug in 86. This must be an entirely different kind of drain emotionally, because at least as a player you can kind of pack the bag and get on the coach and go home and have a couple of pints, and it's far easier not think about what's gone and what's to come. But as the Cork manager is the figurehead now of everything that is Cork hurling, in a period where you haven't won the Munster title since they won the All-Ireland in 1990. And you, because of what you did on the field, bring that huge level of expectation. Oh, well, look, we're struggling the last 5 years. Jimmy Barry Murphy's going to come in. He's going to be the panacea that's going to change everything because of who he is, even though you've never managed at senior intercounty level before.
Club level even.
At club level even. So you talk about the drain on your emotions. That must be a real eye-opener.
Well, I breezed into it thinking that this would be a stroll in the park. I'll take over. I had Tom Cashman and Tony O'Sullivan with me. Great friends of mine, great players for Cork. I said, this will be the magic potion. Now we'll put it all together. We'll win a Munster title and All-Ireland as soon as we want to. And but then again, reality hits you. We played a few league games and we were poor and we were destroyed. And then you still think we've Limerick in the first round of the championship. It's in the athletic grounds, as it was called then, Park Cave. And we go down to the park and we play Limerick and we're absolutely wiped out. To say it was embarrassing, we putting it mildly. We were destroyed. And I would say a massive part down to me not preparing the team properly or not being ready for what the intercounty scene was like.
Would you say you were ready for that role in general, or was it more of a leap of faith kind of jumping in? And I
wasn't ready for it, actually, definitely. I would have needed more experience managing under 21 teams or club senior teams to have made that jump. But of course, your ego gets the better of you and you're asked to do it and you decide to take it. And having won the minor All-Ireland, I thought we'll transfer 5 or 6 of these lads up to the senior team and we'll kick on and the whole party will start again. But Limerick absolutely blew us away. We were annihilated and the performance was shocking, to be honest now. And as I said, I wouldn't blame the players. I'd blame myself for, not reading the situation long term in relation to where Cork Hurling was at. So I had to take a complete rethink after that.
We know what happens in 99, but like in the weeks after the 98 season, are there murmurings around Cork that maybe Jimmy Barry Murphy isn't the man?
Well, there were some murmurings, certainly from certain parts of the media who made comments and were entitled to their opinion that I was out of my depth and that was it the right road to go down. But I must say the county board and Frank Murphy in particular were massively supportive of me, and I had a long meeting with him soon after the game, and it wasn't a review, we just met for a chat, and we realised, I certainly realised then, that this was a massive rebuild needed. So I suppose in one sense that defeat was so big that it brought me to my senses very quickly. What would we do to resurrect Cork Hurling? And then it was quite obvious that the players who had been there had given great service in many cases, just simply were not up to it anymore, and it had to be a complete rebuild from the bottom, and we set about doing that. So
in those terms, does 99 come as a bit of a bolt from the blue if you know that a reset's required, that you're entering what you believe to be a transitional period, and yet you introduce these young guys? I wouldn't say it was a bolt from the blue, Dave, because we won the minor final in 95, as you said, I wasn't there, whatever, and these years got mixed up in my head now. 95, yeah. And we won a couple of under 21 All-Ireland, so this wasn't a bolt from the blue at all. Okay, so the pedigree was there. It was starting to come through again, yeah. So it was just a matter of whether I'd stick it out, and I have the guts to stick it out to hope that we'd win one. So we won the National League in 98. We beat Limerick in 98 in the championship. We were beaten by Clare.
So I knew then deep down we were on the right road. And we said we'd give it one more year then and see how 99 went. And thankfully it worked out fine in the end.
Watching that 99 final is like watching a different sport. And we mentioned it before we came in, Jimmy, 13-12. Like that's a shitty Ulster final in the rain in 2015 type of a scoreline, let alone like an All-Ireland senior hurling final. Now, understandable, the conditions were horrendous.
They were horrendous.
So they didn't lend to like, you know, quick hurling and real great scores and everything. But in some ways, does that give you even more satisfaction that this young Cork team were able to grind it out on a horrible afternoon by a point against a Brian Cody managed Kilkenny team, albeit Brian in his first season?
Yeah, no, it was, as you said, and to be fair, no, it was a horrendous day. We left UCD, we went out for a warm-up and we did a bit of hurling out there, and Teddy Owens, our physical trainer, did a good bit of work with them, got them ready for the game. And by the time we got back to Croke Park, the heavens absolutely opened. It was horrendous. So the scoreline, to be fair to the players, reflects the conditions as well. So we have to kind of pass on that. But anyway, Dave, I've always said this, no one looks back. It's records count. Yeah. It's in the record books.
Exactly.
Who cares whether it was 321, you know? And the players that day were fantastic. And again, it was the start of a whole new era of Cork hurling because a vast number of those players went on to win several All-Irelands.
You said that everything you'd achieved in your career, that winning the All-Ireland as the manager in 99 was the greatest feeling you've ever experienced.
It was definitely, yeah. I look back on it with great fondness and great memories, and fantastic young team. As I said already, a number of the lads had come through minor with me, and I remember Don Lowe Cusick actually quoted me in some, and I often forget lots of things I said to the team, but he said on one programme he was on before the game that your first All-Ireland final is the greatest one to go up. No fear, no pressure. And I did say that to the lads. So I remember from 1973 myself, I tried to get that across to them that this was the day to do it, that it might not get any easier after that day, and some lads might never see it again. And, you know, he was right because, you know, but in lots of their cases, they went on to win many more All-Irelands. But it was definitely the greatest day of my sporting life, I suppose.
So that's some statement, though, isn't it? Like, given everything you achieved on the field, that this surpassed it all. I mean, that's amazing.
And would part of that be due to the pressure that came with managing? Like, would you find it was more nerve-wracking to manage than play? I could tell lies
now and say that it was down to finally being vindicated with the young players and having gone into the job in the first place. Yeah. That we've an All-Ireland now again. And I suppose it was special because the team were so young. And there was one other specialty about it was Brian Corcoran, who was a great player for Cork. And it looked at that stage if Brian might go through his career while winning an All-Ireland. And he was fantastic for us as well. But I think it was more the culmination that Cork were back.
Yeah.
You know, that I'd been part of it.
So Cork are back.
I suppose, Dave, you asked the question, I was being selfish. I suppose, you know, it didn't do my ego any harm. We won while I was manager, you know.
And you joined this this incredible club of players who've won All-Irelands on the field and won All-Irelands as the management as well, which is like, it's a short list.
If you compare three, if you to add the club All-Irelands into that, like, would it still be the top of the list?
I suppose on a selfish note it is.
But it is incredible.
I go back. We had great days with my club, obviously, and I'll never forget. You know, you've done it with your club in County, and I've been there, and like when you come up Bandon Road with the cup and the bars, when this nothing like it either. So you're asking me a question in general. Just I suppose it's a vindication. I got hammered in 96 when we were beaten by Limerick, and you know, you remember those things, and then you could finally feel that. I didn't think I'd get that day in the sun again.
Yeah.
You know, at times during that tenure.
Yeah. So, given the way you talk about the difficulties of 96 and 97, I know you won the league in 98. I always wondered, and this is where when we met today, I was trying to remember when we last met, and it was going back to when you were the manager for the second time.
In Croke Park, yeah.
And Cork aren't going well in 2011. They haven't won the Munster Championship since 05, or since 06 rather. They haven't won the All-Ireland obviously since 05. And that great team had broken up to a large extent. So what was it that possessed you to go back?
Again, I suppose I was involved with my club, and when you're asked, you know, it's a bit of a drug, I suppose. It's a good gap, and I honestly, to this day, I do regret going back because probably in hindsight I shouldn't have. I mean, it's better left for a younger man or somebody else to do it. But look, I made a decision and I went in. I had great people around me. The players were fantastic. They gave us absolutely everything. their commitment and their attitude. Some great lads who unfortunately didn't win in All-Ireland. But I loved every minute of it. But, you know, if you asked me again, was it a mistake going back? It probably was.
It's really interesting. This morning over my cornflakes, I watched your Lake Regale episode.
Oh,
and
very boring life, Dave.
The last thing you said in that was, I have no regrets about my sporting career. And immediately I just thought, wonder when this was recorded. So I went in to check the broadcast date of that Lake Regale episode, and it was 2012.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I ask him that same question today, will the answer be different? And it turns out it is.
Well, it is. I'm being honest, yeah. As I said, I should have left it for somebody else. But I went in, I gave my best shot. And you're asking me, is it a regret? I mean, it's not a major regret. It's just something on reflection, I should have left to somebody else probably.
But if Donald O'Donovan's shot in the last second of that drawn All-Ireland final is like 2 feet to the left,
I know.
It's not a regret.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
As I said, it's people at the highest level of sport, and I was lucky enough to be part of it. Small margins dictate how you feel about these results.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
mentioned the point you missed against Kilkenny. It doesn't define your career in a million years, but it's just something that in the back of your head always.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
Is that true? You know, does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
A missed opportunity, but again, as you say, when you reflect on your whole career as a whole, you can't be anything but grateful. Like,
exactly, and thankful that I was born when I was and where I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, speak to someone from a Waterford, for example,
Exactly.
who, I mean, great hurling county, but no All-Ireland since 59.
I did an interview recently with somebody, and I mentioned that about the great players that I could name. I played with them in All-Star tours, Frank McGuigan, and played people like that who never won All-Ireland, one of the greatest footballers I ever saw. I'd like to send best wishes to his family. You know, Frank hasn't been well, he's in hospital at the moment, so send my best wishes to him. So I saw him playing in the States, and I saw him playing with Tyrone in Ulster Championship matches. He was a phenomenal player. So look, there's a lot of luck in these things. And you know, you must look back, as you said, on your career, and it doesn't define it at all, you know. Obviously you'd love to have won it. And I suppose what I regret about that final is that for those particular group of players, they certainly, I would say, weren't the most outstanding group of players ever represented Cork, but by God, they gave us everything. And it was a great occasion, and Clare deserved it on the day, and no issue with that whatsoever. And there were 2 great finals, by the way.
You know, they were legendary.
Great occasion.
Yeah, they've gone down to folklore those 2 days.
Absolutely. And in fairness, you say, you've got to hand it to Clare. They deserved it. They were just that bit better than us.
Last question. So you've been hurling since the 60s, between starting out, and obviously you're a massive hurling fan still to this day, and I know you're probably going to be in the Gaelic grounds this weekend when Cork take on Limerick in the Munster hurling final. When you think of the sport that you grew up playing and the sport that you watch nowadays, what are the similarities? Because there seems to be, it seems almost unrecognisable.
I don't think there are any similarities to the game I'm watching. I mean, I go to games now and I'm looking at the standard of hurling and the scores that players are able to get from out the field, the skill level, the fitness levels obviously have gone through the roof, conditioning, you know, sports psychology and all these type of things. But I would say it's the skill level. Diarmaid Burns gets the ball 90 yards from goal, and immediately you're saying the umpire is going for the flag, you know. Tim O'Mahony does it for Cork, same thing. Scores from a million miles away down the field that we wouldn't dream of even looking at or attempting in our day. But it's all down to, I suppose, the sliotar is lighter, standard pitches are better, you know, players are more conditioned. It's a phenomenal game over the last couple of years, hurling has been.
Is it too easy to score?
Well, I said to somebody recently that a lot of the art of defending seems to be out of the game. At times now you go to the game and you don't know who's marking who. But I would like to see, certainly at Cork's point of view now, I hope that we'll tighten up a bit in defence on Saturday, and I think we will. But I'm making the point that the standard of skill that players just are so good at using the ball.
Yeah, the stick work.
And particularly also, I read recently that if a man goes down, if you lose a man for a red card or anything, the way the opposition team use the ball now, they'll absolutely destroy you. And we saw that performance by Limerick the last day against Cork was brilliant in Limerick. And again, the question going forward is, can they repeat that again? And something to really look forward to for the rest of the summer.
Is there anything from the game back in the day that you would take into, do you feel like there's anything missing from when you were playing? I
think the art of defending, Aisling, definitely. I think defending is very, very loose nowadays. You don't get these brilliant man markers that you had in my day or even in more recent years. I think play has become too loose, and I'd like to see defenses being a bit tighter. But again, it's who am I to say? I'm only an observer on the sideline now, but a lot of the art of defending isn't as good as it was at all.
With the lighter ball, the slimmer grooves, the power and athleticism of the players.
Definitely.
Often games can descend into free-taking contests.
Yeah.
And the keeper can puck the ball to the opposite 21. He could probably puck it further if there's a wind behind him. And that the old scraps around the middle seem to have gone. Like, there's no great midfielders really nowadays, because you don't really have to field the ball around the middle of the field because it's going over your head into the half-forward line.
Not help you out their half-back line.
Yeah, exactly.
But then again, you got some fantastic skill. I mean, you look at Brian Hayes' goal against Waterford. There was a phenomenal goal, one-handed goal to the back of net, brilliant goal. And look at Cian Lynch's display against Cork. I mean, the man is a wizard when he's on the ball.
The game's full of artistry.
It's artistry, and he is an artist. That's what I was, coming to. But there are great individual flashes of skill. But again, I'm repeating myself. I would like to see some better defending. I think it's very open.
How do you defend a Limerick team that has like two wing backs that can stick the ball over from their own 65?
Well, you've got to put people on them who have a job to do for the day, and then make sure that you don't give them that room.
Their wing forwards, you need to be sticking on them.
I think you do, yeah. I think you've got to.
Well, your defence should start in the forwards. Like, that's what we always say. You defend from number 15.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think you've got to have people man up and identify players in the opposition team who you've got to target. When I was manager of Cork in 2013, that famous final that we lost, we identified Tony Kelly as a key player for Clare and a fabulous player, which he's gone on to prove 10 times over since. But we actually got Brian Murphy, who was a brilliant man marker defender, and Brian was, special. His speciality was man marking, and Brian went on. Tony Kelly did a fantastic job on him. But a player doing that has to sacrifice a lot of the rest of his game to do that.
Selfless, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very few players can do it. But I think if you're playing Limerick, and I don't need to tell Pat Ryan his job, there are certain players against Limerick you just have to identify and try and curtail them.
15 of them.
And maybe some days you can't.
Yeah.
There's just if the opposites are too good, it's like when we were playing Kerry in the old days. Pat Spillane, Mikey Sheehy, Ogie Moran,
Bomber.
Great players. I mean, you try and curtail them as best you can, but what can you do if they're just not good enough?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is.
There's no question the game is probably in a better place than it's ever been. The levels of skill, the pace, the speed, the ability to put the ball over the bar, the shooting. I mean, goalkeeping seems to have gone to a level beyond anything we've ever seen. It's just magnificent to watch.
The whole game, really.
Use the puck outs,
Yeah.
It's
just too easy to score.
Yeah, that's my point. I keep saying it. Defenses have to be tight.
So it's all on the defenders. That's why we need to bring the ball.
I read a lot ago. Defences win All-Irelands.
Yes, the defences win championships.
They do.
And the forwards just decide by how much.
Yeah, the glory boys up front.
Well, Jimmy, you were a Cork glory boy who was there for so many of the glory days, and it's like the names we've had in this podcast in recent weeks, it's just been incredible. We've had some of the all-time greats, and no different today. We're so privileged that you took the time to come down up from Cork today and spend a couple of hours with us. Thank you so much. It's been a brilliant chat. It's been fascinating. And it's great to see you looking so well, so still full of life and vigour, and coaching and part of the selection team with the bars and everything. So keep doing that for as long as you possibly can.
Keeps me going.
And thanks to Aisling as always, and of course thanks to Jimmy Barry Murphy for being with us today. That concludes the latest episode of the William Hill Square Ball podcast. We're going to be back next week with another brilliant episode. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page at the Square Ball Pod. Leave a review, leave a comment as well. Get in touch with us on social media, Instagram and Twitter at William Hill Ireland. We've got plenty more episodes still to come, and again, always just jump into the memory bank and go through some of the older episodes that we have. We've got so many brilliant hurling episodes. If the small ball is really what you're after, Jimmy Barry Murphy episode, just one of many of those. As always, thank you so much for listening, and we will speak to you again next week.